What's up, friends? Okay, so today we're going to be going over this new Netflix show that just came out called Behind Our Eyes. Behind Our Eyes is a Netflix series that just released that has only one season so far with a total of 6 episodes, and each of those episodes range from about 45 to 50 minutes long. Behind Our Eyes stars Simona Brown as the main character Louise, as well as Eve Houston as Adele, and then Tom Bateman as David starts to mingle with. All 3 of these characters really carry. All 3 of them do a fantastic job, and I'll explain more during the rest of the review, but essentially these characters really steal the show. So Behind Our Eyes follows the story of Louise, the main character, who after a late night bar run starts to develop feelings for this man she meets at the bar, David, but little does she know that David already has a wife, and beyond that, their marriage is a little bit more complicated than most. Things escalate and get much worse when Louise continues to start to see David and then gets further unraveled in David and Adele's marriage, and Louise starts to discover that there's even some terrifying secrets hidden in the marriage that start to even threaten her life. In terms of genres, in terms of what type of show it is, I would definitely put the show under like a suspense, marriage, deception type of TV show. Shows that expand upon the normal married life, but beyond that, that show the complexity of relationships and how dangerous it can be to become invested in someone else's relationship. In terms of characters, you definitely fall in love with the main 3 characters, and I wouldn't say fall in love in terms of like you're gonna like all 3, because you definitely won't, but fall in love with as in you're gonna be invested in their stories and you're gonna be very interested in finding out all the hidden secrets with all their lives. You know, Louise is the typical main character. She's kind of innocent, she's kind of idealistic, she's hoping for the best. You know, she doesn't really understand the horrors of what's going on behind the scenes with Adele and David, but she will over time for sure. But as that main character, you want her to survive, you want her to succeed. She is a good person, so you know that she just cares, right? But sometimes caring can backfire, right? And we see that in this show. The beautiful thing about the characters, or the reason that the characters are so awesome, is until the very end of the show, and even I would even argue beyond that, you never really know all the characters' true intentions. Things are really well hidden in this show. Things are well built so that it's hard to figure out characters before they actually do the action they do. What I mean by that is, you know, sometimes in shows you'll watch characters and after like one episode you'll be able to read everything the character does, and on top of that you'll be able to predict what the character is going to do in this episode moving forward. You know, when events occur you're gonna know, oh, this character is going to react like that. But this show, what it does fantastically is it twists on its head, so you'll never ever be able to truly understand what each of these characters are doing. That disconnect makes it a little bit hard to relate to some of the other characters in the show. But honestly, for how short it is, I would say it's definitely worth checking out, just because there is a lot hidden there, and that mystery is very interesting and fun and engaging to unravel. The characters are also really smart in this show, and in that sense it's very realistic. It shows a very realistic replaying of what would happen if some situation like this happened in real life. The side characters in the show are also well built. The 3, obviously, as I mentioned, steal the show, but the side characters are fantastic as well, and they help bolster the performances of the 3 main characters. So altogether, if acting is one of your pet peeves in a show, you don't have to worry about this show because it's got his acting down. In terms of if it holds your attention, as I mentioned before, it's very engaging to unravel the mysteries behind this couple's marriage and the situation that they're in and what's happening. Beyond that, you're also very interested to learn about the characters themselves. You want to know about Adele and David's past and what's causing them to be like this and why they're so crazy. Also, you're kind of interested in finding out what Louise's fascination with all this is. I mean, you know, as a normal viewer, I feel like I would have stepped away from the relationship right after the first or second time that something went wrong. But Louise, for some reason, continues to go back, which is fine, but it's also engaging to learn about why Louise is so attracted to, and how Louise deals with all the different situations that come her way as a result of being so curious about this marriage and about this relationship. The show also does a fantastic job of constantly adding on new layers, new and unexpected layers on top of that help to make the story even more confusing, that help to make it even more exciting, so that even by episode 5 and 6, there's new things coming out that keep you on your toes and that keep you engaged. The show never really gets boring, it has a fantastic pace, and as I mentioned, a lot of interesting things happen, and the story goes in places that you'd never expect. So in that sense, I would say it keeps you on your toes. In terms of what's unique about the show, apart from how unique all the characters are, I would say just the plot altogether is super unique. I mean, we've seen shows before, like for example, You and The Undoing, where it's sort of like when marriages get tested, when marriages go too far. We've seen that premise done a few times before, but this show does a good job of taking it there, but then taking it one step further and building upon that plot and not making it as stereotypical or as cliche as a lot of the other shows you watch. And to that, there is an element of like magic and supernatural element in this show that kind of comes out of nowhere. It's a little bit of a different path that I found to be pretty interesting and relatively engaging, but some people might be like, oh, it's crossed in a little bit of a unbelievable area, right? So another thing about the show is it doesn't go down the traditional path you'd expect. So if that's what you're expecting, if you're expecting a show like The Undoing, where it's, you know, people go crazy and people go insane and actions are justified, or a show like You, where you're following a human character, this show, it is all human characters, obviously, but there is a supernatural element that many would argue is realistic, maybe, but I think for a general audience, it's going to be a little bit jarring. The show's also really well directed and really well shot, and the music's awesome, so altogether it's a very engaging package that will keep you hooked through the entire showtime. In terms of who would like this show, I'd say definitely fans of like intricate relationship, marriage stories, movies about exploring the depth of relationship, exploring madness and chaos, and humans going too far, and the realm of psychology and mental health and stuff like that. This is a fantastic show. Fans of also like shows that are a little bit of a showcase into like normal life gone wrong. You know, what happens when you have a formula, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a marriage, that is balancing on such thin wire, and what happens when something comes in and disrupts that whole ecosystem, you know, and the implications and the fallout of that disruption, and that's showcased in this show. And so if you're a fan of shows like that, where, you know, everything looks so cool until you take a peek underneath, then this show will definitely be in your forte. Fans of how far will you go for love type movies and shows, then you're gonna like this show. I'd say in terms of similar movies or shows, I'd say definitely, as I mentioned before, You and Undoing are very similar in terms of they're about psychological madness and the extent of marriage kind of deal. So all in all, I'd recommend this show if you like deep, complex, intricate relationship shows that explore the limits of marriage, and shows that explore psychological trauma and explore mental capabilities and mental psyche, and kind of show that it's a mystery the entire way through. It'll keep you guessing the entire way through. It'll have you wondering if you truly understand any of the characters. You know, you might relate to one episode, and the next episode you think they're crazy. If you're a fan of shows like that, then I highly recommend this show. Overall, I'd give this show a 3 out of 4. As in, I recommend checking out, especially if anything I mentioned before in this review resonated with you, then I think this will be a fantastic show for you. It's all around well acted, well shot, well directed, so you're not going to be disappointed in that sense. And it's interesting. It'll keep you engaged, it'll keep you guessing. So I don't know if you like this review, if you found anything in this review engaging or relevant, let me know in the comments below, and smash the like button and subscribe. So now we'll be moving on to the Parents Guide, where I'll talk a little bit about the content to expect from the show, in case you wanted to watch it with somebody, or in case you just wanted to know what to expect going into it. And then we'll finish off talking about a little bit about what we learned from the show. So this show is rated TVMA, and I would say the main concern with this show would be the sexual content. There is quite a lot of that, but there was also a good amount of action. In terms of action, I give this show a 4 out of 5. There's a surprising amount of horror scenes. The show has a supernatural horror element that it's not like ghosts and demons, but it's shot and directed in a way that really calls for jump scares and calls for eerie moments, and that tests the limitations of the human mind and showcases when people go truly insane, you know, and some of those scenes can be pretty disturbing. There's also some really dark, messed up stuff that happens in the show. Some of the main 3 characters act in very irregular, very disturbing manners, and they take actions that you'd hope no other human would ever go down and do. So in that sense, it can be very disturbing for young viewers or viewers who just aren't aware, or just viewers who aren't ready for that type of content. In terms of sexual content, I'd give this show a 4 out of 5 as well. There is some strong sexual content, and there is some nudity, primarily male and female rear nudity, but there is nudity, and there's also sexual conversations and references. Sexual themes are a very important part of the show, and in that it's referenced many times, and it influences the actions of many of the characters. So I would definitely not recommend this for anybody who doesn't understand or isn't capable of exploring those themes. I'd definitely be cautious towards watching this with younger audiences. In terms of language, I would give this a 3 out of 5. It's not as strong as some other shows have been, but there is some pretty strong language, especially there is the F word and S words relatively often, especially when characters are stressed and angered. So if language is really something that sways you away from TV shows, then I wouldn't recommend the show, because it is there, but it's not as prevalent as some other shows. So all in all, I would definitely not recommend this show for younger audiences. It's pretty violent, and it has a lot of sexual content, and it has a moderate amount of language. So if any of those dissuade you from watching the show, or if you hate to see any of that content in TV shows, then I would not recommend the show whatsoever. But otherwise, I do recommend checking it out because it's pretty awesome. Moving on to a little bit about what we learned at the end of the show. I think one of the most important things, or something that's easy to pick up on, is just how deceptive people can be. I mean, these characters act irregularly, abnormally, you know, some of the characters are definitely insane, but it also does help to showcase, you know, the length that some characters or some people would go to get what they want, to get what they need. And that deception can be so corrosive and have such a horrible impact on not only their lives, but the lives of everybody around them. The show also does a fantastic job of showcasing the dangers of drug addiction, you know. It's a major theme, especially in the later episodes of the show, and if anything, it does a great job of dissuading people from trying those specific drugs mentioned. And I won't spoil anything just because it is an integral part of the show. But I think altogether we can all agree that, you know, drug addiction is a real issue, and if you need help, you should seek help. The show also does a good job of describing how dangerous it can be to have a need for company, even as to sacrifice oneself. You know, some of the characters in this show are so dependent on others, they lose sense of themselves, you know, and they get reduced down to nothing but an aid to the other character, or an accessory to the other character. And what I'm talking about is like, Adele, she's kind of clingy as a wife, and beyond that, she's built her whole personality on being David's wife. You could see the breakdown in this show portrayed pretty well as she descends further into madness, realizing David might not be the person who he says he is, and he might not be with her for as long as she thought he would. The show also does a cool job of describing dream walking and the idea of dream walking and the importance of dreams altogether. I personally believe dreams are crucial, both in it's important to have a dream that propels you and keeps you moving on a daily basis, a dream as to what you wish to see yourself in 5 years, and you know where you wish to see yourself, and that keeps you motivated. In that sense, dreams are one, but also dreams when you're sleeping are very important. It's important to maybe not overanalyze, but just think about what type of dreams you're having that are reoccurring dreams, because dreams are a great window into a little bit of your like mental health and psychology. You know, if you're having dark dreams on a daily basis, then you might not be in the best place and you might need to seek help, you know, and vice versa. If you're having awesome happy dreams constantly on a constant basis, I mean, I wouldn't take it from me because I'm not a dream expert or anything, but if you're having good dreams on a daily basis, then you're probably content with your life and in a happy place. And also, finally, the last thing I'd say you learn from the show, in fact, probably the most important thing you can learn from the show, is just don't meddle with other people's relationships and marriages, because you have no idea what's hidden underneath there, and trust me, you don't want to find out. You know, in this case, Louise got involved with a relationship that she had no business being involved with, a relationship, a marriage that was way too complex for her, and she thought she could help, but just caused further rifts and further issues. So it really shows the best option is probably just to stay away and to see that first hint, that first cue, and be like, all right, I'm out, I'm dipping. But all in all, I think this show is worth checking out. I think if you're interested in the type of romance, relationship, marriage gone too far, marriage tested type of shows, then this is definitely the show for you. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you all next time.